Is this truly divine justice, or are we the architects of our own suffering? The chilling question echoed through the halls of the Vatican, whispered by none other than Barron Trump during a private audience with Pope Francis. What was meant to be a cordial meeting evolved into a profound debate that gripped the attention of everyone present. Barron, known for his introspective nature and sharp intellect, didn't shy away from asking the questions millions have silently pondered. Why does suffering persist in a world created by a merciful God? And are the calamities we face a form of punishment or something deeper? This unexpected exchange would soon ripple across the globe, challenging believers and skeptics alike. But the answers Barron sought and the wisdom Pope Francis offered would shake the very foundation of his understanding. It all began with a letter that felt like an enigma. Delivered to Trump Tower under Vatican seal, it was addressed to Barron Trump personally. At first, the teenage son of a former president was baffled. Why would Pope Francis, the leader of the Catholic Church and spiritual guide to over 1 billion people, request his presence? Was it political, religious, or something else entirely? As Barron unfolded the parchment, the words were clear but weighty. Young man, the world is on the brink of spiritual and moral crisis. I see in you a reflection of the questions many of your generation grapple with. Come to the Vatican and let us seek the answers together. The words stirred something in him. Encouraged by his mother, Melania Trump, who shared her deep Catholic faith, Barron decided to accept. 2 weeks later, under the cover of night, Barron and Melania arrived at the Vatican. The ancient city's stillness amplified the gravity of the occasion. Walking through the grand halls of the Apostolic Palace, Barron felt a mix of awe and trepidation. This wasn't just a meeting. It felt like the weight of history pressing down on him. Little did he know, the conversation ahead would test his beliefs and challenge his view of the world. The meeting room was intimate, yet regal, lit by the warm glow of flickering candles and adorned with centuries-old artwork depicting stories of faith and sacrifice. Pope Francis sat quietly in a modest chair, a stark contrast to the grandeur of the setting. His kind yet serious demeanor set the tone for the conversation. Barron entered cautiously, his tall frame exuding both confidence and respect. Melania gave him a reassuring nod before stepping back to allow her son to speak for himself. "Welcome, young man," Pope Francis said in his warm, accented voice. "I have followed your journey from afar and admire your courage to seek the truth in a world full of noise. But today, we must speak of something far greater than ourselves, the state of humanity and its relationship with God." Barron took a deep breath, his usual reserved nature giving way to curiosity. "Your Holiness, I'm honored to be here, but I must admit, I don't fully understand why you asked for me." The Pope leaned forward slightly. "Because the world is asking questions, and your generation seeks answers. Why do we suffer? Why does a merciful God allow it? These are questions you and I must explore, not for our sake, but for the millions who look to us for hope." The Pope opened with a powerful declaration. "Let me be clear, Barron. God's mercy is infinite. He does not wish suffering upon his creation. Yet the world is filled with pain, much of it born from the choices humanity has made." Barron frowned slightly. "But what about the pain we can't control? Earthquakes, hurricanes, diseases, things that devastate lives indiscriminately. Are they God's punishment? And if so, what lesson are we meant to learn from such tragedy?" The Pope shook his head solemnly. "No. They are not punishment. They are the natural order of a world that is not perfect. When humanity turned away from God, we inherited a world that reflects our brokenness. These tragedies test our faith, but they are also opportunities for mercy to shine. Through acts of kindness, courage, and resilience. Barron pressed further. But is it fair? Should the innocent suffer because of the sins of others? There are children who lose their parents, families who lose everything. How can we reconcile that with the idea of a loving God? The Pope's eyes softened, and his voice grew quieter, almost reflective. It is not fair. But fairness and justice are not always the same. God's justice is not about punishment. It is about redemption. Through suffering, we are reminded of our need for one another and our reliance on His grace. As the conversation deepened, Barron shifted the focus to humanity's role in the crises it faces. Your Holiness, I've heard people my age express frustration. We see the problems, climate change, inequality, corruption, but we feel powerless to fix them. We're told it's too late, or that our voices don't matter. If God is truly merciful, why doesn't He inspire those in power to act? The Pope smiled faintly, as if he had been waiting for this question. Perhaps he has, Barron. But people often turn away from God's voice because it demands sacrifice and humility. The powerful are not immune to temptation, and too often they choose self-interest over service. Barron nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. So, what can we do? How do we, as individuals, make a difference when the problems are so massive? The Pope's tone grew firmer. Start where you are. Speak the truth. Show compassion. Be the example others can follow. Change does not come through grand gestures alone. It comes through the small, faithful actions of ordinary people. Barron hesitated, then posed another question that clearly weighed heavily on his heart. But what if people lose their faith altogether? If they see suffering as proof that God doesn't care, how can we bring them back to Him? The Pope shared a poignant story about a family who lost everything in a flood, but found solace in the love and support of their neighbors. God's mercy is not always a miraculous intervention. Sometimes it is the quiet comfort of a friend, the kindness of a stranger, or the strength to endure the unthinkable. These moments remind us that He's always with us even in our darkest hours. Barron's eyes lit up with understanding, but he wasn't done. If that's true, why do so many people feel abandoned in their suffering? Why does mercy feel so far away when it's needed most? The Pope looked at him intently. Because in our pain, we often close ourselves off to grace. We demand answers, but sometimes what we need most is trust. God's mercy is not about removing pain. It's about transforming it into something meaningful. The conversation took a deeply personal turn as Barron asked a final piercing question. If God's mercy is always there, why doesn't He make it clearer? Why leave us to doubt? The Pope stood and walked to a window overlooking St. Peter's Square. Barron, faith is not about certainty, it's about trust. God's mercy is like the sun. Even when clouds cover it, it is still there, warming us and giving us life. It is up to us to remember its presence and reflect it in our own lives. Barron looked down, absorbing the weight of these words. He realized that the answers he sought weren't simple, but they were profound. The Pope returned to his seat and placed a hand on Barron's shoulder. You have a gift, young man, a platform, a voice, and a heart that seeks the truth. Use them not to criticize or divide, but to inspire and unite. The world needs leaders who reflect God's mercy, not through words, but through action. As Barron left the Vatican, the weight of the conversation lingered in his heart. Standing in the shadow of St. Peter's Basilica, he made a silent vow to live with purpose and to remind the world that mercy is not weakness, it is strength.